Stuka Joe here, doing a test for this webcam. Yes, I bought a webcam. It's for a specific project which I can't really talk about right now. Probably learn very soon what it's about. And I want to take the opportunity to thank my viewers during the time that I was out. The right eye is getting better, still not 100%. One more operation to go, but this one's a lot simpler. And we'll be back to normal very soon. And, you get to reflect a lot at the beginning of the year of what happened last year. I was out, unavailable to do these videos for a long time. But still, it was a productive year. We had the CDG Solo Method coming out, and it was something that I think people appreciated, and they're still tinkering with it, and I still get emails from the people trying the method with their favorite CDGs. And at the end of the year, we had a sequence of play cards also being developed and coming out, and people interested in them. And so we'll take this opportunity to do some rambling, which I never do, about the CDG Solo Method and where is it going. There's been some fine-tuning done. For example, people have complained that because of the cycle mechanic, where cards flow at a rapid pace through those 5 spaces, which I like to call the virtual hand, and I'll explain in a little while why it's a virtual hand. Because the cards cycle through so fast, they say, hey, Joe, you just have to wait for the card to come back, and you always get to play good cards anyway. I'll just wait for a 4 or 5 ops card that's going to come popping up. And I think that's a valid criticism. Remember that in this method, you nominate cards, but doesn't mean it gets actually played. There's like a 17% chance for a random event, and depending on the space, there can be a 50% chance, the lowest one, that some other card will be played. But in any event, yes, that is valid criticism. And some people came up with some solutions, and what I came up with was that the cards that get cycled out through the E space under the current version of the CDG Solo Method rules, you place them in the discard pile or the played pile. So now it's going to be different. A card that goes out through the E space, not a card that is played, a card that is cycled out, instead of going to the played pile on the right, goes back to the draw pile. Goes to the bottom of the draw pile. Don't place it on the top, on the bottom of the draw pile. That means that card's coming back before any of the played cards comes back. That means, folks, yes, down the line, you're going to have to play that stinking 2 ops card somewhere or another. You can't, you can probably get rid of it for now, but it's coming back, and it may come back later in the game, a 2 ops card, when the war's escalated and you really don't want to see it there. So another thing to excruciate your mind. And the other thing people have talked to me about, hey, Joe, what about those games that the number of cards in the hand varies from game to game? Well, the first thing is, I remind people, the CDG Solo Method is a way of playing the game which is not the same game that the rules are written for, okay? It's a different game. What my theory and proposal is that even though it's a different game, it's a lot better than playing it with the cards facing you all the time. Now, going back to that question, Paths of Glory is a game that each player has 7 cards, but when you're playing solo, each side only has 5 on that display. They have the same number of cards. It's the same for both sides. You see, there's really no advantage for either side there because both sides have the same number of cards. But then people say, yeah, Joe, but what about Barbarossa to Berlin, the resource rule. The Allies capture some resources, and they're entitled to have extra cards in their hand at the beginning of the turn. So what are you going to do, Joe? You have to do now a new display for Barbarossa to Berlin. And if I do that, then I have to do another one for Napoleon against Europe. And another one for every single game. And that defeats the purpose entirely of the method. The method's supposed to be simple in its concept and application, because the last thing we want to do is create a game within a game. We don't want you to have to, on top of reading the 36 pages of Paths of Glory, then read 20 more for the method. No. The idea is to standardize it as much as you can. Okay, it's easy if one visualizes it's a virtual hand. It's not a real hand. Okay, let's go back to that extra card thing. Okay, what in the real game of Barbarossa to Berlin? The Allies capture resources, and suddenly they have an 8-card hand instead of 7, which I believe is a standard, right? So what do you do? Well, you keep on using the display with 5 cards. The 8-card hand gives that side an advantage in that it has a wider choice of cards, okay? But what does a wider choice mean? That in a real game, a player's gonna pick a better card among the ones he has, right? So you pick a better card. You have a chance of drawing a better card and picking a better card. Okay, so now let's transpose that to the CDG Solo method. You're gonna still have the 5 cards cycling through your hand. That's not gonna change, right? Because we're not gonna make separate displays for each game. So what do? You give the side that has that advantage something that the other side won't have. So I thought about what game mechanic can I use, because I'm not going to invent anything, that can do that. And I thought about Eric Lee Smith's The Civil War. You remember, if you've played that game, Robert E. Lee has a rating of 3 that gives him 3 reroll options compared to McClellan, which is 1. And I think McClellan's reroll option is given to the other side because he's terrible. So let's reroll options. That would work, right? So you're the Allies with 8 cards. No. You're going to have, when the rules say you add 1 card, you add 1 reroll option to your turn. And there is the advantage over the other side. Because, folks, under the CDG Solo method, there's plenty of occasions where the roll of the die is going to screw you, especially with a random unforeseen event or even a random event from the cards there. You roll that die. I want to activate that card in space C with a 4. How do you call it? Ops now. Roll the die, and now you have to play the event in card E, which is the Russian reinforcements, which you don't need. But you have the reroll option, okay? And if you want to make it more dramatic, you can say, hey, that chit gives you the choice to actually choose a card in a turn, if you want. But I like more the reroll option because it adds what? Uncertainty, and uncertainty equals fun. Of course, it's a reasonable degree of uncertainty. Widespread uncertainty is just, that's just up for grabs, everything. It's just all random. That's not fun either. Okay, so that's what I'm looking to introduce into the rules of CDGs for those games. And there are plenty of games that give you more cards. And I'm talking about the racer type of games here. The games that add cards to your hand, but you still have the same number of action rounds each turn. And that you have in Barbarossa to Berlin, it happens. In Crusade and Revolution, there is a way that I believe through morale that your opponent is going to get more cards. So use that. The reroll option from the Civil War, Eric Lee Smith. Borrow that mechanic. So now this video is not really about the CDG, but I ended up talking about it. I hope that it continues to develop. And we talked about TED Racer type games. And I was referring to those games that have fixed number of action rounds. You have the other type of games, of CDGs, which are, I like to call them the early Herman type of games, because Mark Herman's done CDGs of that type of CDGs that, like We the People and For the People, that have certain rules that are similar. But then he's done other CDGs that are totally different. So I like to call them the early Herman type of CDGs, but these are the CDGs that don't have a fixed number of action rounds. The action rounds are dependent on the number of cards each side has. And the Union can have 8 cards in a round, Confederate 6. That means the Confederates are going to have to pass in 2 rounds. And in that case, there's no problem at all with the CDG Solo Method, because you don't have to add anything, reroll options, because one side is going to play 2 more cards. It's going to have 2 more action rounds. Now, the situation you may have in a game in those games that like Mark Herman designed, let's say For the People, is slightly different. In those cases, because you're using a common deck of cards, the events that are in the cards are either events that can be played by one side or can be played by both sides. But let's say that you are the Confederate player and you nominate card C. I need a 1 through 5, boom, and you roll a double 4, so you have a mandatory random event with the card in space D. And you're the Confederate player, and the card in state D, in space D, is a card that has a Union event. If you want to play the game pure, you have then to treat it as it was a combat card in Paths of Glory. You can't play it for its event, you play it for something else. If you want to live dangerously, you know what, you can try something that one of my subscribers wrote to me about that he did. And I thought that was very interesting. You can do the Twilight Struggle option there. Remember, in Twilight Struggle, if you are one side, if you're the Soviets and you play a card for any purpose that happens to have the opposing side's event, an American event, the event gets played. You get to play it for your purpose, but the event gets played. So, if you want to live dangerously, do the Twilight Struggle option. I'm the Confederate player. I nominate a card, roll the dice, double 4. I have to play the event in card D, and it happens to be the event of my opponent. Do the Twilight Struggle thing. The event gets played, but you get to play the card for another purpose too. So the event will screw you, but you get to mitigate it because you get to play it for another purpose too. Try it out. Are you violating the rules of the game? Of course you are violating the rules of the game. The CDG method violates the rules of the game up and down. But the purpose of the CDG method is really not to violate the rules of the game. It's to get you to play the game solo and enjoy it. Because if you don't enjoy it, you won't play it. If you won't play it, you won't learn the cards. And if you don't learn the cards in the CDG, folks, you don't stand a chance when you play with another live person. Okay. This is enough for a test video of the webcam. So this is about 14 minutes. I'm going to stop it there. So this is Stuka Joe signing off for now. Thanks for watching, folks.